The first Feng Shui rules were not focused towards money and relationships, but towards the health, the preservation of the health and well-being of the inhabitants of a house. So they also understood that if they had space in front of their house to reach the sun, that this would really be beneficial for the people living there. So when we look at the history of Feng Shui, I do believe that the first Feng Shui masters, as people are called, that master the qi of the environment, that they were actually the shamans of China. And that the shamans tuned into how the energy was flowing. They tuned in to see how the energy was, not just in the body, and that's how they found out the meridians, the acupuncture points, but they also could see how the environment was affecting people's body and the qi in their body. So the first steps in Feng Shui was that they were looking where were the best winds for people to thrive. And so they understood a basic principle of the landscape where a building, a home is placed. They knew that in order to thrive for the family that lived in a house, that they had to protect themselves from the northern winds. Because the northern winds in China were the cold winds. They came from Mongolia, bringing really disease and illness. So they always would make sure that there was no door and no window towards the north, because otherwise disease and illness would come into the family. They also tried to always open up to the wind of the south, because these were the warm winds that were coming in. So when the window and the doors would go to the south, it would warm up the building, and it would definitely make sure longevity was more possible. The first Feng Shui rules were not focused towards money and relationships, but towards the health, the preservation of the health and well-being of the inhabitants of a house. So they also understood that if they had space in front of their house to reach the sun, that this would really be beneficial for the people living there. They also understood that the colder winds of the east were not so positive, and that they had to protect themselves a little bit of the colder winds in the morning. And they had to open the space to the western winds, because the western winds, when the sunset is, brings a lot of great energy for the crops and the family. So they knew the south had to be open and connected with the sun, and the north had to be protected, the east and the west had to be in balance. So originally, that is where I believe Feng Shui was practiced. And so the shamans used beautiful symbols to share with the people how to work with that. So they said, well, to protect yourself from the cold and northern winds, you have to have a tortoise in the back or a mountain behind you, so that the colder winds could not come from behind you over the hills. So you can't have something open to the back, because when you have that, you're more vulnerable to attacks from the colder winds, and perhaps attacks also from other people. So that's the first thing they protected. And so they made the symbol of the tortoise, meaning the curve of the tortoise shield stands for the mountain. So having a mountain behind you was always supportive. And that principle will actually, later on, will placed in when we talk about the power position. In the front, you need space. You need space for the sun to come to you. So they said, well, the symbol for the sun was used, the phoenix, the firebird. So you need to have access to the fire in front of you, the sun that is always non-stop giving you the highest and the warmest energy. So that is why they use that symbol. Make sure the phoenix can fly, and that from your home, when you open the door, you can fly as a phoenix into the sun and always re-energize yourself. The symbol for the east and making sure the colder eastern winds were protected, they used the symbol of the dragon. And so they didn't have to have one big mountain, but they had to kind of have a landscape that is like the back of a dragon. So when you have a dragon protecting you, You'd also not be so open to the colder eastern winds, and you would feel more energized. But the western winds had to really be beneficial, and they used the symbol of the tiger, the white sleeping tiger. So just a little hill, so that just at the end of the day when the sunset would go down, then this colder wind would not go over the smaller hill that is just like the back of the white tiger sleeping. So these are like the 4 symbols that I used.
Hat dir dieses Video gefallen? Dann abonniere jetzt unbedingt diesen Kanal. Denn schon bald findest du hier den nächsten Beitrag von einem deiner Top-Mentoren.